They knew they were in trouble and they knew that they had to do something with the finances. So they brought in Grassroots Solution. And she had made several suggestions to improve things financially for the city. She's normally the one that opens this up, but she's having some problems health-wise. She would be followed closely by Michael Foreman, who also works for the government, and he's our other consultant, he's also ill. So all of our consultants are ill. We had an attorney work with us closely, Bonnie Bremer, and she usually comes with Debbie. So the people who have the majority of the knowledge, except for these guys over here, they are ill. They're suffering from this. So we're going to try to get along without them. Normally Debbie would open. Tonight it's going to be me. And we are going to streamline this. We're not going to do that why each the commission member ran and why we did. We're just going to go straight into it so we can get you out of here in a timely manner. So the second, if you can get to the second one. Can we scroll down?
Yep, we're getting there.
Okay, so this is why we even started to look at it, because this is what Debbie Grass, we apologize, we have some technical issues happening up here. So Debbie looked at things and this is what she said to the city. Because there's been multi-year deficits, we have an infrastructure that's just out of date. Property values are going down. The city personnel is going to have to be reduced because the income wasn't there to make payroll. And there's a lot, you can look around, you see the blighted properties and vacant properties. So she recommended this multi-year financial management plan under the STMP program with revenue enhancements, cost containment, staffing, structures and training, blight strategy study. And finally, it was start the home rule charter process. This is a preemptive move. We want to be ahead. We don't want to have to go into Act 47. No new businesses come to a town that's under Act 47 because it's embarrassing. Your town's broke, the government's telling you how to fix it. So we don't want that. We don't want that stigma. Have copies of the charter, please. And as many postcards and copies as you need, take them. So right now, we are trying to be ahead of, and the final step, which is interesting, cities who do go into Act 47, the interesting final thing in 47 is they have to write a charter. So even if the city did go that way, the final step to come out of it is you have to have a home rule charter anyhow. So we're trying to do that preemptive strike, and we're going to be ahead of the game. If we could get the next slide. I'm sorry. We're having technical issues for those who just came in. We're going to try to do the best we can with what we got working up here. So this is what went on. The question went on to the ballot in June of 2020. And it asked simply, yes or no question, should we look into this? Should we actually form a commission to study this whole process, work through a draft with our consultants? We couldn't do this alone, and figure out what would work for Beaver Falls in the form of the draft that you have. There was a yes vote. And then there were what, 13 people who were in? Something, I'm not sure how many, but the top 7 people that got votes, the top 7, that's what formed the committee. So there we are. They threw me right under the bus and said, "You're chair." Yeah. Mr. Carson is the co-chair. Bethany is our secretary. First, Kirsten is our treasurer. And it's the easiest job in the world because we have no money. Best treasury job ever when you don't have to work with money. It's like, okay, I'll take the title. So we will get into, hopefully, what is home rule? How's it different from the third-class city code? And we all have copies of it that I think, I mean, you can get that online. There is a PA, I have the website somewhere in all these notes. And you can actually download the city code. You can look at the charter and compare what is different. And why is it good for the city? We're going to try to explain that to you and how things will change. And then we're going to take a couple questions. So from here, I believe that I pass it to.
From my first
I'm sorry.
Oh, rock and roll. Sister.
Well, just
I
leave
love
it up there.
No, that's fine. Okay, so I'm Kirsten, and I am going to talk a little bit about what is home rule. So home rule is the opportunity for the city to make some basic decisions about how things are class city code. Because Beaver Falls is classified by the state of Pennsylvania as a third class city, we are bound by the rules that have been written, that were written in Harrisburg, written by all of our legislators, and really haven't been modified to keep up with modern times. And we're bound by that. Home rule charter cannot change most things in that third class city code. There are two areas that we could make changes to. One is our local government structure, and the second is in regards to taxation. And we're going to get to that because that's a hot button issue. So under our home rule charter, the basic authority to act in city affairs is transferred from this set of rules that are made in Harrisburg into a local charter that we have written and adopted locally. So we can't, like I said, we can't do things like change, we can't change any sort of federal or state laws. We can't do anything like that, but we can control the structure of the government and how the city can generate revenue via taxation. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is my friend Neil's slide, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right.
Okay, so we want to talk about the structure of the government. So on the screen, you'll see the third city class code structure, what it is now. So the bulletin points, council members act as department directors. The city controller and city treasurer are elected independent. And those two positions will be eliminated in the home rule. Correct?
Correct.
City department lacks coordination. Council members take on both administrative and policy-making duties. Council members may or may not be qualified to run the departments that they've been chosen. So under the proposed charter, council members or policymakers adopt legislation. As I said, the city controller and city treasurer positions are eliminated. City manager oversees all city departments. Will be a chief financial officer elected or
No,
Hired.
higher.
yeah, to oversee all financial management, and qualifications are established for all positions.
Brings us to Jerry, because it would be Michael, but you know Michael.
My name is Jerry Ford. I'm the current city controller, who's going to be passed. Just to make that now.
Which is powerful, because
Yeah.
his job is going to be eliminated, but he's supporting that for the good of the city.
Yeah.
That's a powerful statement. I'm sorry.
So just going from top to bottom, budget message in plain language. Currently, there's no stipulation that there has to be a budget message by city manager or the mayor. In effect, what this does is explains in English what the budget really means in just a bunch of numbers. Every fund will have an adopted budget, basically what we do now. City information site on all proposed legislation, so I think this would be an informative website of some type, current website that we have. Or any other type of media that the city council may wish to have. Capital improvement plan presented at public meeting. Currently, there is no specific capital improvement plan, but there's capital improvements to be put on the budget. Here, typically it's in the general fund budget. Now it's going to be a separate budget, and this is a better means of planning ahead. It's a 5-year requirement budget. So hopefully, if they do that properly, there's no big surprises down the road. Operating budget adopted at public meeting. That's no different than it is now. and flexibility in taxing options. Just put a slide after this.
I think there's another slide about that, yeah.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wait a second. And we'll get back to that one. Mandatory and that's what we currently do, but it's not mandated by the third class city code. The government charter mandated, it's done by an outside CPA. All payments approved by council flash signatures. That's currently the case now, but in the home rule, there's the 2 signatures rather than 3. Formal purchasing and procurement ordinance required. Right now, we have no purchasing ordinance in a sense, each department almost makes their own decisions as what the purchasing policy should be. This will be mandated by council and by products. And then lastly, the bidding and contracts must be coincided with the Department of Revenue Industry. And that's what we're currently doing now. It just basically says any purchase over $18,000 in this drop. So that will remain the same.
Who's doing this one?
Okay, well, this goes into the tax. And this is probably one that has the most interest for everybody. And seems to be the one that's the most confusing. Currently, under the third class of the code, the maximum real estate mortgage for general fund purposes is 30 mils. If the city needs more than 30 mils for those taxes, they have to go to court and ask for 5 mils. And that's true for every third class city in Pennsylvania. So, for example, Allentown is a third class city, and population of 8,000. So those kind of rules don't apply equally to all communities. So what we proposed is that we would have we would eliminate those restrictions under the home rule charter. And then also the other big tax generator for individuals would be the income tax. And that's capped at 0.5%, and it's been that way forever. So that never changes. So as expenses seem to rise every year, like they do everywhere, whether it's the government, business, or in this case, city government, what you're collecting from the income tax stays flat. So eventually, that catches up with you. So what we've also proposed is that we would have no limit as far as the rate and earned income tax. So we spent many meetings going over this. And what we came up with, we need to have some sort of cap. So we can't have the real estate tax beyond unlimited. We can't have the earned income tax beyond unlimited. So what we put into the charter is that the revenue from earned income and for the real estate tax can't exceed more than 10% from previous year. And some people took that and mean we're going to tax earned income tax at 10%. That's not what that means. For example, if I was earning $50,000 a year, my earned income tax at 0.5% would be $250. 10% increase is an additional $25. Right. So, and then same with the earned income tax. Right now, with 34 mils, if for some reason city council decided that they need to increase that, the most they can increase that would be about 10%. So if you had a property assessed at $30,000, I'm sure most people know that just for my benefit, assessed value and market value are 2 different things. So if your house is worth $60,000, it's going to be assessed at 50%, which would be $30,000. So if we increase the real estate tax by 10%, that'd be 3.4 mils, and on $30,000, that's worth $100. So most of the individual with the earned tax going up 10%, and real estate 10% would be roughly $125 a year. That's like $10 a month, and probably will cable bills, my phone bills. So So that's the essence of what's going on with the taxes. I know, like I said, there's a lot of confusion. And hopefully I explained it somewhat simply, but there's questions on. Try to answer them.
Can I put back on your slides? So this is basically the same thing that Jerry is sharing. But one of the things, those are, right, so currently those are the only two taxes that, that the city has control over changing, and real estate deeds, right? That's the other thing too, like deed transfer tax, yeah. So, so the goal is not to necessarily always raise taxes, but if taxes have to be raised, there's flexibility in the way to do that. Currently, the burden does fall on property owners within the city. And we have primarily a lot of people that have lived in Beaver Falls for a long time, and their primary source of their wealth would be their home. And a lot of times these are older people who are on fixed incomes. And so we feel that it's not a fair thing for the people to those people to always be the ones that are hit with an increase in taxes. It would be our desire to keep people wanting to live in their homes and to continue to make it affordable to live here, not to tax people out of their properties. So the shift could come if there was a shortfall in budgeting, that the shift would come then, that the burden would go a little bit more onto people who are working, who have the opportunity to earn their income rather than just receive a fixed income. So we felt like that was a fairer way to address that, because right now, and traditionally, you know, the burden has definitely fallen on homeowners in Beaver Falls. And we, you know, that's a hardship that should not, those people shouldn't have to carry everybody else all the time. So spreading out the burden is the goal there.
If I can speak a little bit to this as well. The reason you'd have to raise taxes, as Jerry was saying, is that costs go up. And our taxes have stayed the same for what, like a very, very long time. Taxes have stayed the same. If we can't increase revenue, just like at your house, if you can't pay your bills, you have to let something go. So in a city, that means a loss of services. That could mean that our fire department has to go part-time, or our police are cut back, or potholes aren't filled, things like that. So essential services in the city would have to be cut down. As Kirsten has mentioned before, for example, if our fire department goes part-time, and I just had this confirmed by a state legal employee, a lawyer for the state who works in insurance. He said this is true, that if our fire department goes part-time, our homeowners insurance goes up because that's a higher risk. So who do we want to pay? That's paid for some way. We're either paying our firemen or we're paying the insurance company. So I'd rather pay the fireman personally, but that's just an example that I thought was really powerful for this situation.
Our fire department too, one of the most important jobs is first responder.
Exactly. Yep. We don't want to not have somebody show up when we call 911 and a fire. Thanks.
The current income.
0.05%.
1/2
No, 0.5%. It says in the back.
One half of
Yeah, 1/2 of 1%.
1/2.
Yes.
0.05.
Yes.
So if it's only going up by 10%, it wouldn't actually be raised by 0.5%.
No, it depends on what the revenue of the city was. This is just an example for us to be able to like visualize how much
Sure.
that could
I
cost.
wouldn't, if it raised by 10% over the 0.5%, that would be.
No,
0.
it's confusing. The 10%, is for the total amount that the city would receive. So it's not figuring
Not the
yours
rates.
out. It's just saying the city can't collect more than a 10% increase from what they got the year before. It's just a,
Spread around.
yes, it's just a cap so that you don't have to worry oh, they're gonna raise our taxes through the roof.
Yeah, so like if their budget last year was $100 and they needed to raise their revenue, they could only raise it by 10. Does that make sense? And that 10 would be distributed among the taxpayers, the earned income earners. That took me a while to understand as well.
It's easier to use decimals. Right now it's 0.005, the increase of 10% is 0.0055.
Right.
Okay, this is me.
Good.
My name is Doug Carson, and I'm a current city councilman for a little bit longer. And so the slide I'm doing is just that the charter requires high standards for all the people that are hired. That first one, the city manager oversees all departments. That's kind of the way it is, but this clarifies it more in that technically my city council role is I'm the director of public safety, which is, even though it sounds like police, it's fire and code. And technically I'm overseeing the department. The city manager, who's the professional person, understands the nuances of the departments, will oversee the departments and still report to the city council. What it's doing is it's separating, it's making clear that the council is setting policy and the city manager and the departments are enacting policy. If you've ever been on a board, like a school board or something like that, you know the more professional the board is, that's the way they work. The school board sets policy, turns it over to the superintendent and the principals to deliver, to act on that. And it keeps the lines clear. The current third-class city code blurs them by putting the city council members as department overseers. And then, well, where does that leave the city manager? And it makes it more complicated than it needs to be. And then particularly in the area of finances, the same thing was happening there. You had an elected treasurer, then you needed to hire a part-time accountant, and then you have the city manager. You have all these pieces and no one person responsible to see them all. And thankfully, the citizens, the residents of Beaver Falls elected Kevin Kunzelman to city council because he became our finance director, and he does have expertise. He runs his own business, and he's really helped keep the city going. Some of you may know that the elected treasurer died. We had to put somebody else in. That person got very, very ill. So he's really had to keep the department afloat. But that just was happenstance. What we want to do, what our charter does, is it puts a chief financial officer in place, not just the city manager, but a chief financial officer who will be responsible to gather all those pieces and understand them. It's a much more professional and modern way to operate. Now, I just want to stress over and over again, the third-class city code is a great big book written by legislators in Harrisburg, and the home rule charter is, even though it looks daunting, I mean, it's those photocopied pieces in the back that's about that thick, and it's written by people here in your city. So it's a much more forward thinking, forward moving kind of document. A lot of these things, just as Jerry, when he was going down his slide, he said, yeah, we do these already. And, you know, so like the fire and police employees are hired on the basis of civil service rules and that sort of thing right now. Not city employees can't engage in political activity. That's true now. So those things, some of those things stay the same. Okay, now here's another cool, very forward thinking deal with the home rule charter. I know this never happens. I know you never, ever think that, hey, if I were on the city council, I think we should have X, Y, Z ordinance. I think we should, why don't they think of it and do it? But what this what the initiative and referendum allows you to do is it's written into the charter that you can come to the city council and say, hey, I think I'll pick a good one because you know, people get this one. You know, we have chicken people in the city. People want to raise chickens. And so we looked at that and we decided not to. Well, so you say, but I don't agree with that, city council. I think that we should be allowed to have chickens. Just because you voted it down, I think we should. So if you can, there's a specific form you have to get, I think it is 100 people to sign.
You have to get 10% of the voting.
Well, that's
number that
the-
voted in the last.
Yes, yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, there's a formula for how many people get. I'm not, she knows it. I know.
Sorry.
But here's the idea. So you and people who want to have chickens in their backyard, they can actually make it so that ordinance can go on the ballot. So you would first have to bring it back to city council and say, hey, we have all these signatures of people that want to have chickens in their backyard. And city council says, no, we're still not doing it. Okay, then we're gonna have it on the ballot, and then everybody can decide. And it can be both ways. It can be for things that the city council has not enacted that you want to have happen, but it can also be for things that the city council did enact that you think is a bad idea and you want to get it rescinded. So for a time I lived in California, and I enjoyed the fact that referendums for specific questions like this could be put on the ballot. That seemed to me a very good idea for governance. So that modern idea would come to be called.
Let's go you.
Okay, so there are things we can't do. We can't go against the Constitution. We can't go, the US Constitution can't go against the Pennsylvania Constitution. We can't go against state laws. We can't go against labor laws. So one of the things that people thought initially was that we were going to wipe out the fire department or things like that, but they all have union labor agreements. We can't, even a home rule charter city can't get to those. We have to follow environmental laws and the planning code, crimes code, sunshine law. That is, you have to do everything out in public. The city council can't meet and vote and do things. They have to do that in an open public session. Now, may I go?
Yeah, and just on that sunshine law, this commission is under the sunshine law.
Yeah.
Everything we have done has been recorded in a Zoom meeting. It's on our website. It's actually on a YouTube channel. So you can go back at any point and you can listen in to our very boring meetings. For you, it would be not very entertaining. But the ones that I encourage you to go back and look for, we interviewed key people. We interviewed the mayor. We interviewed the fire chief, we interviewed the police chief, we interviewed, Kevin in his job as financial advisor. And those interviews really were enlightening because we didn't completely have a full grasp of exactly what they did. We kind of thought we knew, but there were little nuances and details we didn't really know, and we're like, wow, you do all that too. So those are very enlightening. If you go back and look at any of the interviews, they would be helpful in you like knowing what would be good for the city.
I
Because
can-
what all seems good isn't always what it seems to be.
I'll show you how to navigate there once we're done with the presentation.
Okay, so what happened was, we have all these public meetings that I just mentioned, which were very poorly attended, but we kept plugging away. All of them were under the sunshine law, open, very well documented, still out there. So that was between July and August. By September 2nd, we had to have that draft that you have in your hand ready to report to the election bureau, because it has to go on the November 2nd ballot. So this is what, with those who weren't here when I said we had financial consultants, we had an attorney, we had Michael Foreman from the government, we had Debbie Grass from Home Grassroots Solutions. We had all of these consultants. We didn't just sit and try to come up with this. We couldn't have come up with this. We had people who do this for a living, guide us every step of the way. And Debbie has worked with Newcastle, they're under home rule charter, and a couple other cities near us. So she was well versed in this and we relied on them heavily. So now we're doing this part, the public education part. We go wherever people will allow us to try to explain, here's what it is. And hopefully hearing what it really is will help you decide better when you go to vote in November. So please share with friends, family, anyone that you think is concerned, take as many copies as you need with you, because on November 2nd, we want educated voters. So is that
Sorry.
question time?
Jumping around.
Yeah. Question time, any questions?
Can we go back to Neil's, 2 slides, please?
Sure,
Yes.
that was 6 and 7.
5, 6, and 7.
That is relatively confusing.
Yeah.
So this is what we have now. This is what is written in the third class city code.
I think the biggest change is, like Doug was saying, the city council members are responsible for each department, whether they have any experience with that or not. Like somebody over public work, we call the guys at street department, may not have a clue. Fortunately, the person that's there had a clue, you know? So this will take it to, instead of them just being thrown, like I'm on the rec board. Mr. Chapetta had no clue what to do with the rec board. But we were a well-oiled machine and we could plug away and say, could you just take this back to the city council meetings for us, Mr. Chapetta? He didn't really have to try to figure out how to make us work. We were already okay. But say somebody, you go to you're overseeing a department that wasn't okay, and you didn't know how to make it okay, then that got ugly. So this would just remove that burden of the city council members just being thrown into, you're over this, you're over that. It would just be the city manager that all the department heads report to, which they do anyhow. They just take that out. Then he goes to city council, they discuss things and they work it out. So pretty much, even though third class city code doesn't look like that's how it's working, that's how Beaver Falls is working. Because we have a council and a mayor and a manager that work well together. But that's not always the case.
It hasn't historically been the case,
Yeah, no,
and it,
before
who
it
knows
wasn't.
what the future holds, and so it also eliminates that, I feel like it's important to highlight that would eliminate sort of the potential for like, somebody with like an axe to grind or something to go on a power trip, like, and just kind of destroy the department, or, try to run a department for the people that are actually, being paid to do that, like the fire department or something. So, when you have to answer to somebody that serves at the pleasure of city council and the mayor, then, you can be, that person is professionally handling all of that. And also, if they're doing a crap job, their employment can be terminated. Whereas, currently, if you have somebody that's running a department and running it into the ground, you gotta wait till their term limit is up. and hope that enough citizens, pay attention enough to understand what's going on. So our goal is to streamline operations. It's pretty much what's happening now, like Regina said, and then also just, no powers are being taken away from anyone, or anything like that either. The biggest difference is just that the city controller would be eliminated and, the city treasurer, right? And those are currently elected positions. And what we would do in the stead of that would be to hire somebody that would be running that would be responsible for running the city budget, which seems to me like a no-brainer, particularly if you're concerned about, if there are financial issues, if we have to be tight on a budget, we want somebody running that show that knows how to do that very, very well, not just somebody that ran unopposed for 20 years, because who wants to be a city treasurer? So
I like that
you'll
this is
see, too, in
professional.
that draft, we put very specific requirements that the chief financial officer has to meet. It can't just be somebody who's like, oh, yeah, I used to be an accountant. There's more requirements than that. So we make sure it's gonna be somebody that's gonna manage the money the right way and not drive us into the ground.
I'm following. The city treasurer and who else is being eliminated?
controller.
Okay, so on November 2, because those are elected positions, are they still gonna be on the ballot in case this doesn't get voted?
If
Okay.
their terms are up and, yeah.
Yeah.
So then it would all transition, if home rule goes through, it all transitions January 1st. So say Jerry's reelected to city controller, which he probably will be, then his term wouldn't be up then on January 1st, right? And we would have hired a CFO. What I really like about this is it allows the city council people to be legislators and to focus, like somebody said earlier, and allows professionals to do their job. And then, like Kirsten said, if they don't do a good job, then we hire a different person. So there's accountability and there's checks and balances and there's professionals doing these jobs that professionals should be doing. I like that. I also really am uncomfortable with financial positions being elected. I don't think that that should be a political thing. Sorry, Jerry. I love you. Jerry's my favorite.
But that's what's powerful about Jerry actually on the commission, he's willingly said, yeah, I agree. Knowing that this could just break me right on.
One thing when we put this together, this one wasn't only just a transition, this from 2021 to 22. We looked for a document that's going to be building flexible enough 20, 30, 40 years from now. You never know what's going to change. All of a sudden, maybe a business coming and doing it, that it changes the whole dynamic. You just don't know. So I think the way we put this together, it should be good, like I said, 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
And Jerry was documenting the research, like how many different charters did you bring to us? 25 charters he went through and brought to us.
And if things don't work in what we wrote up, we can bring it back through the same way and say, we want to revise our home rule charter, and you'll have the opportunity to vote on it at another election, at another election. Right now, if you don't agree with the third-class city code, you'd have to go back to Harrisburg and get legislators to try to change it, and the chances of that.
Don't we have a stipulation that they go back every 10 years? They have to go back every 10
Yes.
years and review it?
Yeah, there's an automatic, 10-year time period where it has to be.
Unlike the city code. Unlike the city code, it's been here since what?
Yeah, who knows?
I think Michael Forman once said it had been really, and nothing really changed since probably the 1950s. There have been additions, but primarily. Yeah. And I think it's important, Regina did mention our consultants. Debbie Grass is a third-party consultant that the state hired to help us through this process. But we also had Michael Foreman, who's from the Department of Community and Economic Development. And so the state really, I mean, we talk about reasons, maybe one of the primary reasons why we wanted to look at this was just because of the financial aspect of this, right? We're kind of, we are not a city of 100,000 people that's generating massive amounts of revenues. We're running a tight ship here. And, historically, we have gone off track. the past few years. People have worked really, really hard. Right? I'll say it again, Kevin Councilman worked really, really hard to bring the city back into line. But there were definitely, issues that happened with that. Oh geez, what was I gonna say? So, the primary goal here is the original reason that was kind of a red flag was when our bond reading was slipping, our budget was not balanced. And, early intervention grants came in and said, what can we do to try to strengthen this? And so the city, the glooming bleak picture is Act 47, Regina brought that up, which is essentially a bankrupt municipality. And then you come under, the state takes over your finances, and there's a very strict sort of method for how you come back out of that. We don't want that. None of us want that. There are plenty of reasons why, we don't want to be bankrupt. Are there other benefits? I mean, there is a plan to get out of it, right? If you go Act 47. But that's prescribed by people who are not members of this community, that don't know our issues, that don't know what our community, the makeup of our community. So the state really encourages us, do this, please, because you guys know yourselves way better than we know you. We can say, well, this is our plan, and hopefully it works. But as Regina mentioned at the beginning too, if we did go into Act 47, which hopefully we won't, but looking at home rule and prescribing a home rule charter, is part of the plan to get back out, which is how actually quite a few municipalities in Pennsylvania that are home rule became home rule cities, because they did go into Act 47 and they adopted this on the way back out. So we are trying to be forward thinking. We are trying to be incredibly locally minded, and to be concerned about our neighbors and ourselves, and make this a better way. Who knows Beaver Falls better than the people that live here, right? So that's our hope, is that we've written something that keeps that in mind, and that allows people to continue to live in Beaver Falls at the same level, if not better, of municipal services and government that we've come to expect already.
Does everybody know the background?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
I have two or three.
steamrolling you.
Maybe picking up on what you said, if home rule didn't work out for some reason, say you can amend it, is it possible to go back to a third-class city status, or once you leave, it's bye forever?
You're saying if it doesn't pass?
No, if you pass it, and then 5 years down the road, 20 years down the road, people say, we wish we'd never done this, we don't want this anymore, we just wish we'd be a third-class city, whatever reason, right? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Are there any cities in the Commonwealth? that-
Well, here's the way it would work. I mean, in reality, the third-class city code is a great, big, thick book. And I can't imagine a situation where somebody would go to home rule charter and say, this isn't working, we need to go back to everything in the third-class city code. The reality of what would happen is you'd look at your current charter and you'd say, now, in the old third-class city code, this is what they did, and that worked better. So you write that as an amendment into the home rule charter. I think by referendum, right. I mean, I think that's how that would happen. I don't think a city that went to home rule charter would go back and say, we want to go back all the way back to third-class city code. But we do want to write into our existing charter back here, things that work back here that we find are missing from the home rule charter.
I think the state is trying to get third-class cities away from third-class code. They're like, this is not work for anybody. It's outdated. Like the way the financial management structure is not a modern way of doing it. So I think that's part of why they're just like, please do this.
Yeah, I mean, my question might be is like, is there some sort of, does the state Commonwealth punish you somehow for coming back and you don't get back to it on as good mean, I understand it's unlikely that anything will go back to it. And I was asked earlier about, anybody else? I'd asked earlier about the, you got the 0.5% up there. Maybe you could run back to that. I think the answer to my question there made me wonder, does anybody know what the breakdown currently is in revenue between the real estate earned income and the transfer taxes?
Off the top of my head, our income tax, the general fund is roughly 500,000. Real estate's about $1.7 million. And real estate transfer, I think, is around 50,000.
Because what I was seeing there sounded like it would be 100%, a potential 100% increase, raising it. Right, if it's currently 0.5% and it was raised by 0.5%, that's a 100% increase in the earned income tax. Which could, that's why I asked about how the breakdown is, because I can see, and I haven't thought through yet, but I can see that could work and stay under the 10% overall, depending on the balance between the three. That's why I was asking for the balance.
Yeah. Yeah, that, I mean, the figure that we use is for,
And is it just for example? Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
why I asked, because
Yeah.
I think the
Yep.
number was $170 or something. And then
you
scroll
pull
down
down a
at
little
all.
bit.
And that's why I was asking, because if it
Mhm.
was supposed to be 0.05, then it's not $176 extra tax, it's $17 extra tax on on this person's, right, bill. But as you answered me earlier, it wouldn't necessarily be capped at
That slide
0.05
could have
as
been
an
written a little better.
percent. Sorry.
I said that slide could have been written a little bit better than it is.
Well, it would be pretty gutsy to put 100% tax increase in 1 year on people's earned income tax. It might be within the letter of the
Mhm.
charter, it sounds like, but it'd still be gutsy. So I was just, yeah, understand that.
Well, if you add up those three numbers, and take 10% of it.
Yeah.
The total, whatever increase or decrease in real estate, or increase tax, increase in real estate transfer. Real estate transfer, whatever that dollar amount would be. Then it'd be up to council to decide how they're gonna do that.
The idea of oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ethel, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question and then. So we're talking about the earned income tax. Okay, so that's the money that we pay back to the city of Deer Falls, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're saying that this is gonna save the senior citizens or the people who are on a fixed income? So are you decreasing the tax for them, or how's this going to?
So it allows flexibility. We can't sit, I mean, what elected official is thrilled about raising taxes? Like, that's how you get yourself 0 popularity votes, right? So hopefully the goal would be if you needed to increase taxes, you could spread the burden out further rather than only increasing real estate property owner taxes. We can even it out a little bit. You know, I think if you asked the current city council what they would do, and we can only speak for them, but I think, you know, they would say, we just tapped out, we're at the highest level of millage that we can be at right now for real estate tax in Beaver Falls. Because we didn't raise taxes, no taxes were raised for about 10 years. And that's not really responsible management. Like, if costs go up a little bit, your taxes should go up a little bit, right? And that wasn't being done. And so there was a hole in the budget that had to be filled, and it all hit property owners. That works for some people. For some people, it really doesn't. So the goal, again, is not necessarily to say, you know, like, we have no idea how the city council what they'll do with this flexibility. But it is up to that city council to determine how they want to do it versus right now where, you know, you've got specific prescribed ways
Because, I mean, the other reason I'm asking
Mhm.
too is I work, and so now I have this
Yep.
increase, but I'm also a property owner. So I'm, I'm getting hit.
That's right. That's right. And the goal would be to not have you get hit with increases on both that would make, but rather than have an astronomical increase only on your real estate taxes, we would have a slight increase there and maybe a slight increase here. So it may end up being for somebody like you or me, because I do the same thing. I work in the city of Beaver Falls and I own a home in Beaver Falls. But we are going to prevent people who are on fixed incomes from losing their homes due to property taxes that they can't pay.
Also, when that burden is spread out to income earners, there's way more of us that are gonna contribute to that 10% raise, right? So like this thing says, the increase is actually so small that we might not even, it won't be painful because there's so many more of us. Whereas there's not there many of us who own homes, and that increase is painful because it's not spread out among as many people.
And there's no new construction, it's not like we're building new homes in the city of Beaver Falls. Our property is pretty much allocated residentially as it is. So we're not gonna have a giant, because the homes that are owned in Beaver Falls are already all owned. So unless you build new homes within the city limits, that number is never going to change. But the more jobs that we have in the city. Now, Jerry, remind me of this, because this is where I always get screwed up too, because it's only people who live and work in Beaver Falls whose rate that we increase, right? So if you don't work in the city of Beaver Falls, we can't raise your earned income tax. That goes to the municipality in which you work, correct?
No, she lives in the city, worship what she's on page.
Oh, okay. So yeah, okay, never mind. That's what I was trying to ask. So yeah, okay, nope. So if you live in the city and you work, got it.
I will tell you that the current city council talked about that if this passed, if home rule passed, in this leveling idea, that we would reduce the millage on property tax if the earned income tax was increased. But that's not written into the home rule charter. What is written into the home rule charter is that cap, so that they can't go crazy, whoever the council is.
We felt that was extremely important.
Yeah.
To put in a limit. We were advised not to, but we are Beaver Falls residents, we're peers, and we know what Beaver Falls needs, so put that in there.
I don't know what the current percent of the city's budget goes to personnel currently. So I don't know what the impact might be of this question, but it seemed like on the slides on slides with the
What was
different
on it?
positions.
Oh.
Just obviously, this is a real overview picture, but it seemed like there were more maybe paid positions and more, as you're saying, more professional positions under the home rule setup there than is current. What impact would that have on the overall personnel budget?
I think it's one professional position that's added,
Yeah.
right, the CFO? No, yeah?
It's
Yeah.
subtracting treasurer, subtracting controller, and adding a chief financial officer. And
You have a city engineer.
he's not a full-time, he works at Whitmer and we contract services, the same with solicitor, we contract with the legal firm to provide legal services. The city manager is a full-time position now and would be under home rule charter. City clerk is full-time, obviously police, fire, but there's the CFO. And the honest truth is that Kevin, after watching he's actually now hired a chief financial officer even under the current city, because the elected treasurer died, the person in place got sick, the part-time accountant is retiring, so there had to be somebody. And we saw how much more efficient this is. So I hate to undercut home rule charter by saying one of these things is already happening, but it would be better to have the CFO and not have an elected treasurer and elected controller to, again, muddy the lines of communication.
You're not undercutting because home rule charter requires the
Right.
chief financial officer.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. I don't, yeah.
So.
I want this to be a reason for people to vote and not say, well, it's already being done.
As
We
far
also-
as dollars are concerned with the current cost with the treasurer's office, it should be pretty much break even.
And that we did talk about the cost of not having efficient management is higher than hiring somebody to have efficient management. Just like it is at home, if you don't know what like you and your wife are doing, you're all, you might be paying the same bill twice or something, instead of streamlining things and working together under one plan.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming and asking questions.
We do appreciate it, because that's the only way that the public becomes informed, is to come and get the answers. So we appreciate any input, suggestions, we take those all.
Have you got any concerns besides trying to figure out the tax structure? No concerns. Okay.
Go back to one slide
Wait, which one?
to the other,
Six,
current.
the one.
The current one,
wonderful.
yeah. Mhm.
I mean, is it current, under both citizens, the city council can hire and fire all the paid positions pretty much, right? And that doesn't really change.
Other than, your labor agreements are always enforced. But your city manager isn't under that. Your police chief isn't under that, but the police officers are. So the city council just willy-nilly can't fire police officer X, but they could say that you don't want the chief anymore. Kind of funny how it works.
Do you have our website?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I can show you guys, so let's go back home. The way you get to the website is bfhomerule.org. This is also linked many, many times on our Facebook page. But every piece of information that we know is also on this website. The next meeting is always at the top. And then there's, as we scroll down, there's like just a general overview that you can read in your own time and how we got to where we are, really detailed how we got to where we are. And then over on the side, you're not gonna be able to see this. There is a survey you can take that lets you kind of weigh in on some of these issues. There's all meetings in progress is where you want to go if you want to find out what we talked about any given topic. So I always link the actual minutes. If the video worked, then I linked it to our YouTube page. Anytime you see no video, there's nothing nefarious going on. It's literally technology. So you can see like what we talked about, and if it's important to you, you can click on it and see what we said. So that's how you get to there. It's just through there, and that's a good resource if you have deeper questions. All the resources page, this has so much information. It's so much. It's like too much. There's all sorts of like where we got our information from. There's all of Jerry's research here on like all the different codes in all the different cities. By the way, there's only two third-class cities in Beaver County, Aliquippa and Beaver Falls. And Aliquippa is in Act 47 and trying to get out of it. And so we are trying to stay ahead of that with this whole process, like was mentioned earlier. Things don't really want to load, but there's a lot of stuff in the resources over here. If you really want to spend a really great afternoon boring yourself to tears, but if you have questions, you can either ask one of us. I've been responding to Facebook messengers. I can see those. There's an email address that's listed at the bottom of the webpage that Regina will answer, or you can probably find information here. Google is not always going to be your friend because sometimes what is appropriate for home rule in another town has nothing to do with us. So like if you look at what you know, the dangers of home rule in Clearfield, Pennsylvania has nothing to do with us, wherever else. It has more to do with them. And so we should take our contacts as, you know, ask one of us. Good. Anybody have any other questions?
Thank everybody for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you to Second Baptist.
Yeah.
Take as many copies as you need to share with others, and if